أن تكونوا شامة بين الورى فاختفوا آثار جيل للمعالي سطرا إن أردتم أن تكونوا شامة بين الورى.
Relationships with each other, relationships with people around us, relationships with our environment, and relationships with our Creator. And that is the business of religion. Islam is really about this X and Y axis relationship, the vertical and the horizontal relationship between man and his Creator, God, man and man, or woman and a woman. Okay, that relationship, that is what Islam is really about. The Book of God is really about that. The teachings of all the prophets were really about these relationships. How do we develop them? How do we enhance them? How do we really strengthen our relationships with one another? And in that, of course, it encompasses justice, peace, reconciliation, war, violence. How do we deal with these issues and these dimensions of our life that affect our relationships? So really, relationships is the very key, the essence, the core of religions, and particularly the religion of Islam. The Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, said very clearly, he said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The only reason I have been sent is to perfect strong character, is to make strong character, is to perfect what we would call moral virtues. That is the only reason. That is the only reason I've been sent. And when, it's very interesting, the people of Makkah, the idolaters, had all kinds of accusations against the Prophet. They called him Kahin, soothsayer, somebody who could predict what's going to happen in the future. He was accused of being a magician. He was accused of being possessed by some kind of jinni and some kind of spirits, and that is why he was so eloquent, they thought. And it's very interesting. When they make that accusation, the rebuttal, the reply from God is what? Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun ma anta bi ni'mati rabbika bi majnun wa innaka la'ala khuluqin azim. By the inkwell and by the pen that writes, you are not possessed. There's nothing of being mad or crazy or any kind of that idea in you. Why? وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Well, you have a very strong character. And this is really, again, telling us something very fundamental. How could somebody who is so generous, who is so kind, who is so just, who cares for the orphans, who cares for the widows, who cares for the ill, who works for the betterment of others, how could he be mad? How could he be possessed? How could he be at fault? This is a very beautiful, just showing how important, how powerful character is in the sight of God. It is the character. It is, our attitudes or attitudinal behavior that is so important and so crucial in our religion of Islam. And perhaps being so important, being so radiant, being so obvious, what happens? The crazy Muslim does what? Ignores it. It is so obvious. Yet, sadly, it's one area that we have ignored. And we are dazzled, possibly. We are dazzled by the beauty and the power of the character of Muhammad, by the beauty and the power of his moral teachings, to such an extent that, we can't see. We're blinded. And so coming back to, I thought I want to talk about scientific facts in the Quran, all right? And the Quran, of course, is not a science book. Islam doesn't, it's not about science. Yeah, no. Science, very simply, is observation of nature, of the world around us, the physical world, observing it very carefully, scrutinizing it, experimenting, and then getting all that data, analyzing it, reflecting and pondering on it, and getting some results to make sense of things, okay? That's what it's really about. It's trying to understand God's creation, really, so how better we can use it, okay? What are its usefulness? What are its benefits? How can we better use it for enhancing our lives and our luxuries and our comforts or whatever it is? And so Islam is, the Quran and the teachings are not really about science as such. It's nothing, that is something which we can do. It is actually about the more important, the more crucial side of our lives, like what Pinocchio was talking about. If I'm okay with you, I guess, I'm okay with myself. And it's that broken relationship, that Islam is really about mending. I remember British prime ministers from Wilson onward. I don't think Wilson ever talked about broken families, but certainly from Margaret Thatcher, I can't remember any British prime minister who hasn't said, we have broken families, we have a broken society. Almost all of them have said it many times, in fact. We have a broken society, we have broken families because we have broken individuals. Broken individuals because, we have broken that very important covenant. That's what it really comes back to, the covenant that we have, natural covenant that we have with our Creator. We've broken that relationship with our Creator, and that is why we are broken as individuals. When individuals are broken, of course, the family is going to break, the society is going to break, the community is going to break, the country, the world is going to break. And that is where, religion comes in. It is about islah. This word the Quran uses, islah, aslaha yuslihu islahan. It's about mending, repairing those broken relationships. But first, we do really need to understand and accept this reality that, there is something very seriously wrong with us. And so what I wanted to do was look at some of the latest research that's going on, particularly in America, on moral virtues and their impact on health and well-being. I've come across more than 400 papers, scientific papers, over the last decade or so, which specifically look at the impact of moral virtues, and I'll explain what I mean by moral virtues, on our health and well-being. But what are we talking about here? Let me just do some groundwork first. I use the word moral intelligence. Educationalists now are accepting this notion that there are multiple intelligences. I'm sure you all agree with that. Do you, right? Is that right? You agree with the idea of multiple intelligences? It's not just one that you're either mathematical, logical, literary genius, but there is the musical intelligence, there is the kinesthetic intelligence, there is the interpersonal relationships intelligence. All are important, and all are actually very serious intelligences. They are really important things. And I over the last about 20 odd years, I've been very seriously studying Islamic moral system. And it grew out of the teacher training program in Gloucestershire University, where I was delivering a module on personal, moral, social, spiritual development for maths and science teachers. And my interest in that, in that field grew from then on, and I began to look at what Muslim scholars, particularly in the medieval time, like Imam Ghazali and Miskawi and some of the other Muslim philosophers, wrote and talked about morality in particular, and then spirituality and social relationships as well. But with regards to moral intelligence, I regard this as just like, some people are very good in with words. They're wordsmiths and really have a gift of gab as well as being literary geniuses. And then you have mathematical geniuses who might be very poor at writing completely, but they'll be fantastic in their mathematics, in their scientific and logical way of thinking. And then there'll be those who are actually supremos at interpersonal relationships. And then there are those who have no inkling of how to build relationships, totally inept at that. And similarly, I really believe moral intelligence is very important, and it is what determines our interpersonal relationships, really. So this is the acquisition of knowledge and skills, firstly in order to develop and improve character. And I normally talk about 10 moral virtues, and these are 10 moral, very complicated, actually, programs. When we talk about kindness, forgiveness, generosity, I don't know whether ever we would be able to make programs, which would be able to help our robots to be generous. But that's what they are. They are actually very complicated programs that we start developing from the day we are born, perhaps even before we are born, in our wombs. And we learn these values of generosity, of forgiveness, of kindness, and throughout our lives, we are trying to perfect and to grasp them. And I often lament and moan about modern society, that we are going towards the Star Trek's Dr. Spock. Is that right? Dr. Spock. Do you know who I'm talking about? Yes. Now, this is really fantastic, because he is, of course, very scientific, calculating, and everything has to is processed in a very logical manner in his brain, and of course he's half human, isn't he? He's android, is that right? So he processes all that information, but there is never a smile. There isn't never that human warmth coming from it. Okay, he's very great at making those calculations and making those decisions of right and wrong. Okay, but that is where moral virtues come. Those right and wrong decisions. It's not as simple as that. Normally in schools we teach children, morality is knowing right and wrong. Okay. But it's really far more complicated than that. One of our great teachers, Imam Ghazali, made a very beautiful and a terse and a very pithy definition of it when he said that it is the state of heart and mind from which good happens without thinking. And that is a very good definition of what moral virtue is, what morality is. It is your state of mind. It is how you have programmed. It is your attitude for doing these 10 things: forgiveness, courage, generosity, kindness, justice, humility, gentleness. You're programmed. But it doesn't just happen. You worked at it very hard. Others have worked on you. Your mother. How many times has she forgiven you? Anybody ever calculated how many times your mum and dad have forgiven you? I have 4 children and I have 2 grandchildren, so I know what it involves. Particularly with your grandchildren, because they mess around with you and they know they can get away with it. And it's just amazing. How many times you have to show that kindness, how many times you have to show that generosity, that humility towards them, and it's just amazing. And that is how we, that constant examples from our parents is what really teaches us this. And this is why, we know very well, if there are families full of anger and wrath and bad temper, that is what you're going to have, in the next generation. We learn these traits and characteristics from our family. So that's what we mean by morality. It's this programming into those wonderful and very complicated programs, and that's what they are really. They're very complex.